Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. I'm here today with Debra Atkinson, hormone balancing exercise coach and 39-year fitness expert. Debra Atkinson has helped over 275,000 women flip their second half with vitality and energy that they want. Best-selling author of You Still Got It, Girl, the After Fitness Formula for Women, Navigating Fitness After 50, and Hot But Not Bothered. Debra hosts Flipping 50 TV and the Flipping 50 Show, and she means fitness business podcasts with more than 3.5 million downloads. She's a prior senior lecturer in kinesiology and a subject matter expert recognized by the American Council on Exercise, ARP, Washington Post, Prevention Magazine, and USA Today, to name a few. Her TEDx talk is titled, Everything Women in Menopause Learned About Exercise May Be a Lie. Debra is the creator of the first and only exclusively made for menopause fitness membership in the world and the Flipping 50 Menopause Fitness Specialist course for fitness and health coaches. Flipping 50's message is there is no bigger health influencer in the world than a midlife woman. Today, we talked about why everything women learn in menopause about exercise may be a lie and what to do about it. Why anybody's fitness is really nobody's fitness. And men and women use fuel differently. Women need a different stimulus than men do. And older people need more recovery than younger people. We talked about that and why that is and how to recover properly. And if a woman's priority is her bone density versus her muscle mass or her fat loss, what does she want to do? What type of activities does she want to do? And how quickly could she build some bone density? And how strength training really acts as a hormone replacement for the midlife woman, and how a woman with more muscle mass entering menopause will live longer, have fewer hot flashes, less belly fat, and less insomnia compared to those with more body fat and less muscle. We talked about so much. We talked about dryness, a lack of libido, both of those regarding sex, and how our exercise prescriptions will be different in perimenopause, menopause, and why, and how it is a myth that we have to have all this belly fat and be out of shape because that we are a certain age. We talked about ditching stress, really getting rid of high cortisol because cortisol can cannibalize your muscle, and how to really put natural supplements to use or bioidentical hormones. And this conversation just kept getting better and better. You guys are going to love Debra. She is an expert in her field with 2 podcasts that I mentioned in the intro. Make sure to check those out. She is a wealth of knowledge and just a woman that any woman feels comfortable talking to. And I think that that is a real need, especially when it comes to midlife, where people don't have enough knowledge, not enough conversations geared around this topic. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. Without further ado, diving in with Debra Atkinson. I am so excited to have Debra Atkinson on Sisterhood of Sweat today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's awesome. Love the name.
Oh, thank you. I love the name of yours too. I was admiring Flipping 50. I'm like, that is like the perfect name. How'd you come up with it?
Well, it's a great story actually. So my book title right back here was set to release in about a month, less than a month, and the title of it was the After 50 Fitness Formula for Women. And I was like, okay, and then we were on a boat with a mastermind, probably having a little wine. And one of the gals said, "No, you still got it, girl." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so good." Right. And, then that actually tripped the names. This was not the original name. Flipping 50 was not the original name. It was something else that I didn't love. Fabulous. And a lot of people are using it. It just doesn't resonate for me,
Right.
fit and fabulous. And but flipping 50 to me just said so much. Like, it's time to flip this whole idea of what 50 means, flip
Oh,
the
I
second
love
half.
that.
Yeah. And mentally just expect better so that we get better. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. It's better than I'm flipping 50. Like,
Right.
it's like I am
Well, yeah.
flipping 50.
Exactly. Exactly.
And somebody might actually think you're flipping all around doing that.
50% of my friends probably would go that route. Yes.
Oh my gosh. I had a column in Miss Fitness magazine for 15 years. This is so funny. Um, and it was what, fit over 40. And so, but I was well over 40, but I hung on to the title because I was
Mhm.
like, this is a perfect title.
Mhm.
And I wasn't sure when I got 50, well, what title do I want to have now? And it just it's just so funny how people are so hung up on age when they hit a
Numbers.
certain
Yeah.
number and they get these numbers going.
Mhm.
And I remember because growing up, the way women talked about menopause, I was scared half to death to have it because I was like, oh, you're not relevant after that. And it's so like not true.
Yeah.
Dispel that myth for me today. Why are women able to be relevant, if
Mm.
not more so, after 50?
Well, I think number 1, because we are talking about it more, right? I mean, it's not just the scary stuff behind the scenes that you hear your mom, you overhear her talking to her good friend, it's actually we're talking about it more. And, it's not all true. However, I think overall the biggest message is we're openly addressing it. And I think the UK is far in advance of the United States in terms of they're recognizing that, like in the workplace, this is an issue. A woman can't just be in a cubicle and, not being able to adjust the thermostat because she could be drenched, and there's nothing she can do about it. But they're actually dealing with it better, and they have been for 5 or 6 years at the very least. Now we're catching up and we're beginning to realize it, and monies and companies and corporations are being allocated to kind of look at what do we need to do for these women who are our managers, our CEOs, our executive assistants who are actually keeping the show running. Why aren't we taking care of them? I think that's huge. And I think when a woman starts to realize it doesn't have to come with weight gain. It doesn't have to come with belly fat.
Mhm.
Yes, all we have to look at is historically the 80 and 90-year-olds now lost muscle, got frail, fell, injured. Probably that was the beginning of the end. But they never lifted weights their entire lives. I mean, if you're lifting weights right now, we're not going to put them down someday and say, oh, I'm 70 now, I'm done. No, no, no. We're going to do that our entire lives. And we're going to change the game because we do.
And I think that's the biggest thing women fear when they're hitting menopause is that they're going to get a menopause, which is the
Mhm.
menopause belly,
Yeah.
um, that they're gonna not enjoy sex anymore
Mhm.
because you hear all these stories about, I think it was Suzanne Summers before she got on Bioidentical was like frumpy, grumpy, and all dried up. I mean, she was naming off like the seven dwarfs.
Yeah.
And so it's just interesting that many women really fear this age, and I think it's because they're chartering into the unknown, but it's just really a change, like when you go from being 8 or 9 to being a teenager, you have a change, and
Hmm.
teenager to young woman to
Yeah.
pregnant woman to perimenopause, perimenopause to menopause. So having conversations like these,
Hmm.
well, knowledge is power. And I want to say, why would you say that we are not over fat, but under muscled?
Yeah. And I think, you know, you and I probably are the anomalies, right? I mean, we started long ago lifting weights when a lot of people were scared. A lot of women were scared that, oh, I don't want to get bulky, right? And it's just that dichotomy, that diversity of I want tone, but I don't want any muscle. You know, I mean, 1980, I heard that over and over again without them understanding. Too many women didn't understand the muscle comes from, or the tone comes from the muscle. And for any woman who says to herself right now, I can prove it. I did start lifting, and whenever I started lifting, I got more bulky. I want you to just think for a minute back to the 80s, even the 90s. When you were doing that, were you doing 3 sets of 10? Because that's what everybody was taught to do. That is a bulk building protocol, girlfriend. And we were eating high carb and low fat because we thought that was the ticket. That is the problem. Too low a protein, too high a carb. You were actually on a bulk building protocol that we use for cows in the Midwest. I mean, this is not a good thing, right? So now you don't have the hormone levels that you did then, but we also are, many of us, doing much lower carb intake. And I'm a lower carb, I'm not a no carb girl, because we need them for having a good mood. We need them for pooping. I mean, we need them for sleeping. We need them for a lot of good things. And if you're more active, you need them for energy as well, but definitely lower, because most people for years ate as if they were marathon training. We don't need all those carbs, and we need them timed right. But we certainly have that fear of getting bulky, and we have a muscle problem, a lack of muscle problem, which is wonderful because we can solve it far easier. We can chase fat loss all we want, but unfortunately we can almost never predict it. We can't catch it. And what we will lose when we lose weight trying to just lose weight or just target fat is we will lose a percentage of muscle. And if you're not careful, that's a big percentage. And that comes back to bite you. And in fact, for a lot of women in their 50s, that's what's caught them. They went through that
Yeah,
cycle again and again.
right.
I lose muscle and fat. I gain
Mhm.
back 100% fat. That cycle going on for very long doesn't come out in our advantage.
Yeah, it's like a vicious cycle because I grew up
Yeah.
in the era. It's very rare that I meet somebody that's been in fitness as long as me. I mean, I started at 21 and I'm 61.
So
And
cool.
so I have to say it was the cardio era. We were cardio bunnies. We wore the
Yeah.
leg warmers, the
Mhm.
leotards. And of course, we did some toning, more like leg lifts,
Yeah.
abs, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And so you might be stuck in a mode that you learned
Mhm.
for a certain age, but
Yeah.
I promise you, when you hit 50s, 60s, you don't want to overdo your cardio. You're going to break down your joints. You're going to get rid of all that muscle that's so hard to earn,
Mhm.
and you have to train differently, I think,
Yeah.
at each age, and eat a little differently. Like, you
For
can't
sure.
just do what you did when you were 20 when you're 50 and 60.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we really want to consciously be aware of is how can I exercise to not damage my cortisol? So, during that whole menopause transition, a lot of women realize they're in perimenopause because they've got the signs: hot flashes, night sweats, they're getting insomnia, But a lot of women also don't really realize it. In their 40s, maybe they just think, I did this until I was about 55. I thought, I'm just going to skate through this. Not going to get me. 56, I was like, oh, there you are. Oops. Okay. So it's that wake up call will come, but in your 40s, you're declining, your estrogen levels are declining. And if you're on say, an oral birth control pill, you probably will mask this more because it's helping you have a regular cycle. You're not getting irregular because you've got something falsely telling you it's regular, but you're going through irregularities and this up and down roller coaster, but it's still trending down. And when estrogen goes down, your body says, oh, we're going to send cortisol up in attempt to say, I'll just convert that to estrogen. And it can't do that very well, does a really poor job, like 10%, but then we still have the negative effects of the cortisol. And cortisol catabolizes our muscle. It breaks down muscles. So when you're under
Yes.
stress, it's going to be even worse. And that's where we have to juggle the idea that exercise is stress. Our bodies like to be on the couch. And so, putting on purpose, planned exercise, stress to your body can be helpful. But if you're highly stressed, you're in those moments of, I'm a caregiver, I'm at work, I've got extra things going on at home, and you're trying to sustain your regular exercise program. You may be tipping the scales, and you can't change all these things, but you could change your exercise and still then be just as fit. So nobody's saying here you have to settle. We're just saying if you want good results, you're going to have to manipulate the exercise in order to get the results you want.
And I was doing what you were doing up until like I hit menopause.
Yeah.
I went through the year at 55 to
Mm-hmm.
56.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it was because I just kept going and I felt the clock ticking on my fitness competing, like doing like gymnastic type routines across the
Mm-hmm.
stage. So I did like 6 that year and my cortisol was through the roof
Wow.
and I began tearing muscles from the pelvis because you are not making as much estrogen and
Yeah.
therefore you make more cortisol for the stress.
Mm-hmm.
And then the cortisol cannibalizes the muscle.
Mm-hmm.
Much easier, of course, because I believe it is your, can't remember, it was your ligaments are getting looser and
Yeah.
your muscles are getting tighter, right?
Your ligaments are lax
Yeah,
and your tendons are tighter. So
yeah,
it's a great time to be doing heavy strength training with
yep,
a like good solid foundation, but a terrible time to be doing gymnastics or
yeah.
plyometrics with rapid direction changes. That's true too for like a woman who's still cycling.
Mhm.
Like in that
Right.
second week, like day 10 to 14 after your period starts, that's an ideal time to strength train, but not to do that high impact ballistic kind of movement. If you are, do it on a bike so you're safe, elliptical so you're safe. Yeah, so glad you brought that up because a lot of women need to hear that. Why am I always getting injured? You're not necessarily doing
Yeah.
something wrong, but you're working against your body. Yeah.
And you learn the hard way if you don't have this
Yeah.
information. And that's why it's so important to have conversations like this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, after ripping pretty much almost all muscles from the pelvis, because I was stubborn, I learned, oh, my body's breaking down.
Mm-hmm.
I need to stop tearing it down. I need to start building it up. How can I do that? How can I
Mm.
do everything differently? And I went to so much schooling on this subject, but some of the things I learned were you have to fortify, you have to do things like your collagen, creatine.
Yeah.
You would have never ever convinced me when I was younger that I would ever take creatine. I was worried it
Really.
would make me bigger, it would make
Yep.
me gain weight, make me
Yep.
bulky. It's your best friend. I
Right.
would say over 40, it is your best friend.
Yeah, totally agree. I think so. I did a summit in May and I had several people like Dr. Stuart Phillips, on who's protein researcher and longevity, aging. And he said, I have a very limited, and he's one of us, like he's over 50, so we can qualify his answer. But he's like, I have a very limited supplement list, but on my shelf is creatine. Absolutely. It's a must. Yeah. And so for men and for women, muscle and for bone density, it's also proven
Hmm.
to be very effective. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. And so I also did some supplements for the joints, for arthritis, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But just learning, well, what you need, learning what
Yeah.
you need, and making sure you walk away from stress
Yeah.
as much as possible, because when you're going through that, it raises your cortisol, which then is like a downward spiral. So I learned to walk away from stress, to get plenty of sleep, because again, your sleep, well, if you're not getting it, your cortisol can spike
Right.
up to 30%.
Right.
So getting
Totally.
sleep is huge. Now, why would you say, this is what I've discovered, and I know it's also in the research, that younger people, the biggest thing with being older is you don't recover as quickly. When
Yeah.
you're younger, you recover much faster.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely true. And, I think this comes from no matter who you are. So if you're an athlete, you may say, well, I recover faster than, say, my non athletic friends. Maybe true, but you just need to look at you to you. Like you right now to you 10 or 5 years ago, even, but definitely 20, you're going to need a little bit more time. And this is why rest and recovery is as important as the exercise itself. And we forget that, especially those of us who if we're talking to the ladies of the 80s, like exercise every day and I do this every day. And unfortunately, I think some of our agencies are, you know, .org agencies are still giving, every day do this or every day do that. The one thing that if you walk away from this with, it's pretty intelligent, but pretty simple. Don't forget to say, how do I feel? Right. Because if you don't feel good, you feel more tired afterwards. You could take a nap after exercise. It's not the right formula for you right now. So you got to restore before you can do more. And, I think HIT is another really great example. High intensity interval training has this reputation for being like the gold standard for fat burning. And there are a lot of studies showing that for postmenopausal women, it can really help target visceral belly fat. However, I think we have to forget that we've got a responsibility to say, but if I already am suffering from adrenal fatigue, I'd say I'm tired all the time. It's not your day to do HIT. May not be your week or your month. You got to restore that first. And that may be supplementation, learning how to sleep, helping yourself get into a regular cycle of prioritizing sleep, using some of the dozen habits that will help you. Maybe it's magnesium for you or a Epsom salt bath, or just shutting off those screens earlier in the evening, same bedtime, same wake time. That's crucial for you. And I think you've got to really look at how do you decrease your cortisol levels, and or they could be too high or too low. Too high at the time they should be low, or too low at the time they should be high. If you're waking up and you feel like you're hungover but you didn't have the fun to earn it, you know that's an early sign of adrenal fatigue. That actually is the one that got my attention. That's the one that made me cry uncle and say, I need some help here. I'm gonna start more adaptogens. I'm gonna look at bioidentical hormones, because I've been a morning person my whole life and I'm no longer a morning person. So I've got to do something about this.
I did all sorts of things for adrenals,
Yeah.
um, which has worked like a charm. I take, like, natural supplements for
Hmm.
adrenals from Designs for Health. And I have to say, I have energy all day long. I
Hmm.
came in off the red eye from LA and I went straight to work and trained clients. And my client said, do you ever run out of energy? And I thought, now, some years back, you would have not asked me that. But learning to get that sleep, learning to fortify the adrenals instead of burn them out.
Yeah.
I don't drink coffee, except I did there was a frou-frou coffee machine at my hotel in LA, and it made hundreds of different coffees. So I said, it's a treat. I'm
Yeah.
having it as a treat this weekend, but not, I don't drink it on a regular basis again, because for me, it
Mhm.
spiked my cortisol and I didn't need that. My
Yeah.
cortisol was really high already.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that. And, you said, like, pun intended when you said walk away from stress earlier. I think that's such a great statement because truly, I think looking at your stress levels, your blood sugar levels are going to be higher. And a lot of times that insulin resistance is what's showing up in belly fat. Even for those of you who don't gain weight necessarily, it just relocates right to the belly. And
Mhm.
you've got a little more there than you ever did and feel like, I don't deserve this because I'm doing all the right things. It may be that your stress level is higher. I usually have a continuous glucose monitor on, and it's actually sitting on the counter waiting for me to plop that on. But it's been helpful to me and to a lot of clients who need to see it in real time to believe I need to do something. But walking has been like my ace in the hole. So I'm not as disciplined as you, unfortunately. So I get up and I like to have a little matcha or coffee. And it's the cortisol. It's nothing I doctor it with. It's the caffeine, I'm sorry, that elevates my blood sugar. So because I'm not willing to give it up, I do go for a 30-minute walk after
It
when my,
spikes your blood sugar, right?
yeah.
Because the
So that
caffeine, people
walk
don't realize that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that walk helps me like offset it. I'm not necessarily doing myself any favors, but I'm at least not doing that damage and getting that spike. So there's
So
that.
I will tell you, I didn't think I would, my husband called it my star crack, but yeah, I did not, um, how you say, think like I would ever give up coffee. Well, I didn't start it till I was 50, which I don't know. Why did I do that? But I will say that once you quit it and you truly have given it up,
Yeah.
you sleep better, so
Mhm.
much better,
Mhm.
and you're calmer, I have to say. I would think I was all jacked up on my Trentas before. And what would I say? I think like just overall, I have so much more energy. I don't wake up feeling like, oh, I've got to have a coffee before
Mm.
I start the day.
Mhm.
So I would just say, I know everybody's like, I'm not giving up my coffee,
It's
but
a hard
I
one.
think it takes from you more than it gives you.
Mhm.
Um, like now I have sustained energy throughout the day.
Talk about your gut. Did you notice when you quit improvements in your gut health?
Yes, and
Mhm.
also less belly fat.
Mm. Okay, well, there's the selling point right there. If we had any doubts, that was it, right? Yeah.
So like it's to me amazing. To me, it's amazing. Now, I would also equally like to say not everybody does well on bioidentical hormones and pellets.
Mhm.
And maybe you need them, but maybe you don't need them forever.
Mhm.
Like I
Mhm.
did mine for a time,
Mhm.
and then it all went haywire once they added estrogen.
Oh, yeah.
See, I never was able to really do birth control. I always had that problem. And so
Mhm.
I was good until
Mhm.
they put in estrogen for a year. And
Mm.
I felt like I was a fat factory. I was like, where is all this coming from? I've never had this. So I had a coach that was coaching me for fitness,
Yeah.
and she encouraged me to get off. And so I did. And I went back to my normal small waist, my normal small self.
Mhm.
And so, like, I do things like plant type things that I don't
Yeah.
know if I'm saying this right. It's a kind of a
Mhm.
hard one, but Purifica Mercana, I take that. It's a
Mhm.
plant-based estrogen. I do that.
Mhm.
Um, I do maca to help boost my testosterone, where there again, if you have testosterone, you're gonna get a little estrogen. And so I do a lot of those type of things now.
Mhm.
And let's talk about bone density because that's where I'm
Yeah.
kind of headed with this. Because
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people think well, I need to keep taking my bioidenticals for my bone density, but equally, if you're weight training, strength training, doing some weight bearing exercise, you're gonna increase the bone density naturally, correct?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of factors. So you have to make sure, first of all, gut health. I mean, back to that, maybe you need to get them
Yeah,
up coffee so that you're absorbing all the good things that you're eating. So
yeah,
sometimes bone loss is a factor of you're not absorbing any of the minerals or vitamins or all of them. Some of them are just going through because you have gut health issues. So I think there's way too many women tolerating that, bloating, gas, constipation, or diarrhea. And they're just saying, oh, that's me. That's just always been me. It's like, I don't care how old you are, you can improve that for sure. And there's a sign that you may not be absorbing. So it's not just what you eat, but it's what you absorb. That's a factor of it. But absolutely, we know now that you can reverse bone loss. When I started lecturing about osteoporosis and osteopenia, I had to stand at a chalkboard in adult education and I had to explain it and draw pictures, of modeling and remodeling and what that even meant. And now it's a
yeah,
household word. I mean,
right,
imagine. And even
right.
men, can get it. But again, that comes back to not absorbing everything. But yeah, with strength training, what we're learning now is if you've been diagnosed with osteopenia and osteoporosis, certainly not advocating that you just cold go out and start doing high impact and high intensity weight training. But the studies since about 2015 are actually showing that women in postmenopause diagnosed with osteoporosis can do high intensity. So we're talking 5 to 7 reps to fatigue. So that's a heavy weight and doing high impact, like drop jumps from a box to really load the bone, have been reversing osteoporosis, bone losses. And, that's really exciting, right? That we used to think, yeah, that we had to put you in bubble wrap, and just you are delicate. And and then all the things we told you, don't do this, don't do that, made you scared and you did less. And you probably, because of that, lost more bone. So now it's time to kind of get the word out. You're not as at risk potentially. And if you have been doing some kind of activity, but you learned today that you have low bone density, the only thing that changed is that So don't lose that muscle, don't lose that impact that you have been doing. Maybe start taking it more seriously. I got to make sure I have good form, but maybe I need to do heavier and do more.
And back to the creatine again.
Yes.
I didn't mention this aspect of it, but when I had all that high cortisol, it's like kind of like a storm, so much of it. You can't get muscle when your cortisol is so high.
Yeah.
And that was the thing I was noticing that because I've always had no problem getting muscle when I lift. I was lifting, I could have lifted until the cows came home, and I was not getting the muscle that I should have from all of that. And what I recognized then when I started the creatine was that all came back, like all of the muscle, everything,
Nice.
when I was lifting, and I felt strong. And I turned the corner from injuries that I had. They were horrific, having my hamstring reattached, and I tore my abductor bundle from the groin with bone fragments and just all these horrific
Wow.
things. Horrific. I literally, from that creatine, rebuilt to the point that I went and captured the Fitness Universe Championship at 60 in open division. I'm just saying, like, because I was able from all of those things to get back up. And I swear it was the rest, of course, the sleep, of course, but the
Hmm.
creatine was a huge, huge
Hmm.
factor in that. So having that muscle and lessening that cortisol is so key.
Absolutely. Yeah. When you look at every hormone, you look at what is its role? Does it build up muscle or does it break down muscle? Cortisol breaks down. estrogen, which tanks when you hit menopause, that was a stimulus for muscle. So, we have to kiss that one goodbye, but we got replaced with one that breaks it down. So then you have to look at, what else am I doing to fill that gap? Like, something has to fill in. So it's heavier strength training. It may be impact. It may be creatine, making sure you're getting adequate protein in your diet. And
Yeah.
that's a place too where a lot of women have skipped or skimped for a really long time. And I want to say that watching my mom diet, it was in the 70s and 80s that meat was associated with higher fat. There was higher saturated fat in meats. It was marbled, and it was true. But it was a quick way, if you cut out those calories, to lose weight. Now, it didn't necessarily work out in their favor, cutting out protein, but we still have a bit of that hangover, that mentality, that eating protein may not be, we don't need that much. We actually need
Mhm.
more. So if you're sitting at home and you have teenage sons at the table and you have a spouse partner at the table,
Mhm.
and there's a bigger piece of salmon there, you need to stab it. You need it more than they do. They've already got the advantage of testosterone and growth hormone. You need it. Yeah.
And actually, animal fat got a bad rap, but it isn't all that bad.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
that's
actually
true.
kind of important for your retinol and so many things that you derive from the animal fat.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting how we would cut out a food group,
Mhm.
and I just think the balance is key, the rest, the
Mhm.
de-stressing, nourishing your body,
Mhm.
especially now.
Mhm.
It's a time to just embrace and love your body and nourish your body. And I love that you said that, about the exercise prescription being different at different ages, because sometimes less is more. When
Yeah.
you are getting older, if you're getting a lot of stress from like the hit training,
Mhm.
uh, like Shailene Johnson recently, if you guys have ever heard her podcast,
Mhm.
she
Mhm.
was talking about walking.
Mhm.
She was walking and weight training,
Yep.
focusing more on her legs, which of course that's 75%
Mhm.
of your metabolism right there from here to your waist down.
Yeah.
And just thinking about that, she lost 9% body fat making those changes over a year. And this
Mhm.
is somebody that was a fitness guru, though now she said
Right.
she's kind of given that up. But it's just very interesting. And I went to France. I ate the stuff,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
gosh, the bread, I had some prosecco, I had some cheese, chocolate mousse, and we walked everywhere. I
Yeah.
didn't do my crazy amount of cardio. I lifted twice while we were there. And I lost weight and body fat.
Yeah.
And so I think we get stuck in thinking that one way is the only way.
Amen. You know, how many times have you heard this? Because I've heard this a ton. Women will go on vacation, and up to the vacation, they are fearing it. They're paranoid. They're saying, "Oh, I don't, I'm afraid I'm going to lose all the progress that I've
Yeah,
made."
right.
And then they go, but they do come
I
back
yeah,
surprised like you. And it's
yeah,
like, stress. I mean, you were relaxed. I mean,
yeah.
that has so much to do with it. And, if you were traveling and you told me you weren't sleeping, I would say probably that's going to come out a little differently for you. But if you were enjoying it, that I call it bipolarism, right? When you're exercising in the highs and the lows, like you're doing intense strength training when you're doing it. And that doesn't mean for hours. It just means you're really reaching muscle fatigue. You're giving your body overload, and you have to put that weight down at the end of your 10 reps or 15 reps, if it might be that. But you're doing that and a lot of walking, but you're leaving out that middle range. We call that no benefit zone, because that is actually what we learned in the 80s. That target heart rate zone, like take your heart rate, walk around, don't stop. Belly's going to pool. We thought you were going to die if you stood still and took your heart rate,
I
right? I
remember.
mean,
I know. Oh my gosh, every time. Yeah,
but
we're like
that
taking
middle target heart rate range that's where stress accumulates. And we got away with it. It's not that it worked all that well. I think our bodies were already at the peak of muscle mass. We were at the peak of everything in youth, and we could get away with it, but it didn't necessarily work to our benefit. I mean, imagine how much better we could have felt, had we not necessarily been doing all that. Just, get breathless sometimes if it's appropriate for you, but otherwise, spend your time strength training and walking, strength training and walking. I think that's the golden ticket, or try that as a reset. Because here's the thing I like to say: if what you're doing isn't working right now, you have nothing to lose. You can always come back to what's not working now, right? Just try something new.
Oh my gosh. Oh, can I just put that on repeat? I say that
Right.
too. And I love that because it's so true that we get stuck about afraid to give something up, but it really wasn't
Right.
doing what we wanted in the first place. And with that
Yeah.
rest and repair, rest and
Mm-hmm.
digest, rest and rejuvenate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was also going to New York City every week on a Wednesday and not working out, and went to France, did all these things, and I was helping somebody get ready for Fitness Universe. I really actually was wanting to back out because I had so much on my plate, and so it worked out though that that was the best time to go compete
Mm-hmm.
versus what I always thought I had to do, which was
Yeah.
2 a day, or, like I thought I had to
Yeah.
get in there and just really, and I think learning that again, uh, this week when I went to LA, um, and didn't work out that much, had some things I wanted, came back the same way, losing body fat,
Yeah.
losing weight because I slept more,
Yeah.
I laughed more, I
Mm-hmm.
relaxed more, and if you're already in that mode, you probably need to move more. But I'm just saying for the average person that's probably thinking they're not doing enough, maybe you are doing too much in this at this age.
Mm-hmm. Amen. The Goldilocks, right? You're looking for your Goldilocks, and you're looking not to compare it to Linda's Goldilocks or my Goldilocks or your best friend's Goldilocks. That's where we get in trouble thinking, well, they can go to this class and they're getting all these results. It just, your hormone profile is different. The way you handle stress is different. And, it's funny that, so you were already in strength training, you were already, kind of a strength competitor, and I was an endurance junkie. So I've done Ironman, and, so I deserve to be slapped, right? I deserve to get in trouble because that was like, that's the anti, of everything that I say now. And I learned the hard way. I thought I
Oh
could
my
get away with
gosh.
it. But, basically what you're describing, I experienced when my mom was passing away. Most recently, it was just in those last few months where there was so much emotion and so much stress that I found that exercising like for about 20 minutes, and for me, it happened to be hit. I had to purge some of that emotion out, but that's about all I did. I couldn't actually bring myself to go for a long walk. And I don't know if there was too much reflection time there. It was too painful to do that.
Oh my
But,
gosh, probably.
but I found at the end of all of that, and she was 95. So this wasn't tragic. She had a great life. So there was so much love, around all of this, that I also, at the end of that, was, in better shape. I was leaner. I was not exhausted. It wasn't that kind of a lean, after a crash, after a high stress. But, it's like we have to get that wake up call again and again, just to
Yeah.
have the evidence in our lives
I
that,
think
oh,
so because in our minds,
yeah,
it's just
yeah,
not how it works. Um,
exactly.
why do you say strength training can act like a hormone replacement for a
Yeah.
midlife woman?
Yeah. So many things. So first of all, because the estrogen crashed, I mean, the strength training now has to be the greater stimulus. You can pick that up, and it can't be the strength training that you were doing prior to menopause. You have to change it. Probably has to be a little bit more intense. And again, some of us equate intensity to volume of length of time or the number of days, and that's not it. It's making the session you do count. And that might be fewer repetitions, might be, I'm doing like 5 sets of 5 now for a lot of times. And, I cycle through that because, I'm going to go heavy, heavy, heavy. You're going to go heavy, heavy, heavy injury if you do that, right? You have to kind of go heavy, heavy, heavy. I'm going to go light and maybe go light for a few weeks, but much heavier. So it's picking up where estrogen left off. Number one, we also have growth hormone and testosterone levels are important to gaining lean muscle. So we need it for, we're going to benefit those two things by strength training. We're going to seal the deal by getting that sleep, because that's when those hormones are released in our deepest cycles of sleep. So if you have a snoring partner or you have an old dog, you can find a place for them to sleep elsewhere. Or, I know a lot of women are willing to not sleep with their husband, but they won't give up the dog. Go figure. Right. So, but the other thing is that we talked about the belly fat, and that's the biggest complaint, for a lot of women is, I could deal with maybe this couple extra pounds, but not the belly fat. I don't like that. What do I do? That's related to the insulin resistance, and so we don't process our blood sugar as well. We need more and more insulin in our body. And muscle is like a sponge for blood sugar. So if you have more muscle because you're strength training on a regular basis, then every time you move, just getting up, walking down the hall during the middle of the day, or taking a little dance break, or walking 10 minutes here or there, you're using all of that muscle and it's kind of pulling blood sugar out of your bloodstream so it doesn't have to get deposited as belly fat. And when you lift more, have more muscle, that's happening around the clock for you. So your blood sugar is more stabilized. That's pretty valuable right there, even just those things. But it's also great for your brain. So a lot of women suffer from anxiety and depression, some of which are based on our belly fat, right?
Oh,
But
or your gut health.
yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah.
So it helps with that as well.
I mean, your gut health your gut is like your second brain, your
Yeah.
serotonin, your melatonin, all like these things are made in the gut,
Hmm.
and your feel good, like
Yeah.
hormones. And so I was taking GI Revive by Designs for Health,
Hmm.
um, to kind of help restore my gut health because I didn't know if I might have leaky gut, but I thought, well, it couldn't hurt to fortify my gut. And
Yeah.
so it's got the glutamine in it, it has some fiber in it, it has all these things to help to restore the gut health, but all equally eating like a tablespoon of the probiotic sauerkraut you can find in the grocery store now
Mhm.
is a great way to restore your gut health in a
Mhm.
small amount of time. And I've been recommending it to clients that don't want to take a digestive enzyme.
Yeah.
And they have had problems all their life just going to the bathroom. And now they're not having any trouble since they've been eating this probiotic sauerkraut. So I think just realizing that knowledge is power. How can you
Yeah.
empower yourself at this age is so key. Now, I want to go back to what we first said, which is why everything women in menopause learned about exercise is a
Mm.
lie and what to do about it. I just want to reiterate that again.
Mhm.
Why is everything they learned a lie? Dispel like some of these myths.
Yeah, and here's the thing. So in defense of the fitness industry, so, if I throw the fitness industry under the bus, I throw you and I under the bus. But we just got it wrong. We got it wrong. And when you dig into the research, what I realized is 39% of all exercise and sports medicine research features women. But, you could look at that and a lot of women will say, well, 40, 60. Yeah, I mean, there are some places where it's worse than that, in terms of discrimination.
Yeah.
But if you look at all the changes, the hormonal phases that a woman goes through in her life, I mean, there's an average of 7, and some women go through those multiple times in terms of pregnancy, perinatal, prenatal, postnatal. And that's not even factoring in the monthly cycle that a woman goes through during her reproduction. But let's divide 39% by 7. I mean, that's less than 6% of all research out there features you right now in the hormonal phase you're in. So if you're in perimenopause, you're in postmenopause, and it's probably not evenly distributed research, but there's very little out there. And so if you and I didn't know, and I've been a trainer, I've been a kinesiology lecturer, I taught students this. So this is probably my redemption, being here and talking about it. You know, if we didn't know to ask, is this program based on research, based on women just like me? Chances are it was not. It was based on a mouse or a young athletic man who most often is featured. So 25-year-old men, are most often the subjects in studies. And whatever makes us think that, a man who's at the peak of muscle mass at 25 is going to be what works for him is going to work for a woman at 55, because basically we're at the peak of fat storage. That's what our bodies do easily right then when estrogen went like that and cortisol is up. So we have to say, wait a minute, I maybe shouldn't be doing this protocol. Maybe I shouldn't go to this class that is for everybody, and there's all ages and both genders in it, unless I really know how do I modify for me. So, and I can tell you from being a trainer for years myself, I looked at how people moved, I looked at joints, I looked at ligaments, but I did not look up for this woman what do I need to be doing based on her signs and symptoms of her hormones until I did, right? So it's only been in the last decade that I've done that, and I supervised dozens of trainers for years. They didn't do that. I taught at a university for 15 years, and I taught the courses that prepared our majors to come out and be fitness professionals. In one semester, we
Hmm.
never
Right.
ever taught anything about menopause. Nothing.
Oh, I mean, it's been the most under talked about subject.
Yeah.
Like it was taboo, like to
Yeah.
talk about this. And I think it's important to talk about it. Like now that I'm post menopause and I'm 61, I've bounced out of the whole changing part. I don't have
Yeah.
hot flashes. Um, I sleep great and just all of the things. Like I don't wake up in the middle of the night like somebody stuck me in a light socket wide awake. And so I think just learning, I also take well rested for Labs, which is a sleep supplement. It's a non-addictive sleep supplement. But I think just realizing and recognizing that there is the other side once you come through menopause. And now, like, I'm not really struggling with all of the things that I did
Mm-hmm.
for that window of time. And so I think women need to know that it will get better
Yeah.
if you're
There's a
going
light.
through there's a light at the end of the tunnel,
Yeah.
and it will get better. Let's talk about sex for a minute, because I think
Okay.
that women go through this point where their desire goes down too
Yeah.
when they're going through menopause.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be painful if they don't have the bioidentical hormones
Mm-hmm.
because you could get dried up. What are
Mm-hmm.
some solutions for women in this phase?
Yeah. Well, first of all, stop doing your cardio. So all that cardio is kind of killing your libido. So stop that. Start strength training because you want to boost that testosterone again. And if you want to do that, strength training is a part of it. So not overdoing it, just doing what you need to do, and hit or high intensity interval training as a substitute for your cardio. But the walking is also going to help. So if you're high in cortisol, I mean, imagine the last time you were stressed. Maybe when you were younger, sex maybe help you offset some of that stress. But usually I think the older you get, when you're highly stressed, you don't actually gravitate toward sex. You're kind of avoiding it because you're just not feeling good, probably not sleeping as well, and that also sabotages it. As far as dryness goes, I would get this question more, oddly enough, than I would get anything about incontinence. I don't know why, but for decades, no one shared with me that they were incontinent unless I probed and probed and really had to ask all the questions. Because that's an embarrassing thing, I think, even to talk about. But people would let me know. Women would say, I just have no desire, and yeah, but they would also say, well, I'm recently married. I remarried and 2 years ago, and we were, the needle was, we were hot, and now it's like the needle is bouncing on zero, and I don't know what to do, and so as far as dryness goes and painful intercourse, obviously I'm kind of out of my scope of practice, but one of the things that's been really helpful is Julva by Dr. Anna Kabeka, kind of supporting with that, and it helps
Yeah,
with
I've
pelvic
tried that
floor
too.
muscles
Yeah.
overall and incontinence. I've had people report crazy success with incontinence on that, even people who've had bladder sling surgery. So, I would also get blood flow back to the pelvis. I think if you're, you know, not moving enough, but also if you're just doing very linear movements, you know, get into, salsa dancing, start moving your hips a little bit more, work on pelvic tilts and rocking that pelvis forward and back. Pilates can be wonderful for loosening up the lower back and the hip
Great for
flexors.
incontinence too.
Yes. So you've got to draw a little blood down to it. If you remember, when you were a woman and you were cycling, generally a lot of women were kind of horny in that week before their period because there's a lot of
Right.
blood flow there.
Yeah.
Now we
Mhm.
don't have that piece.
Yeah.
So you can create it,
Okay.
with exercise, create some blood flow down there. And that can be helpful.
I know somebody out there has benefited from this conversation. I just want to mention too, when you said I had Dr. Anna Kabeka on, that
Yeah.
that cream is miraculous and that it
Yeah.
does help to take away that dryness.
Hmm.
Um, but also Erica Zeal I had on, and
Yeah.
she did all of these exercises for people that had incontinence and just had that leaky bladder. And
So, how small a world is this? Erica Zia was one of my students at Iowa State University.
oh my gosh, that's
Right?
crazy. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's incredible. I love her.
Yeah. So do
Um,
I.
so many things that you can do to help yourself today if you're having any of these issues so that you can be of a feeling fantastic at any age, and you don't have to let a number on the calendar
Mhm.
stop you from having an incredible life.
Amen. Absolutely. We've got another good 30 or 40 or 50 years. I'm going all the way, right? So, we're going to play with, somebody. So, we want everybody to be there in triple digits.
100%.
Yeah.
So I have enjoyed you so much, Deborah. I want everybody, tell them your podcast, you have two, and name off your books again and where they can get all this.
Absolutely. So, the Flipping 50 show is for probably audience listeners right now. She Means Fitness Business is for health coaches and fitness trainers, or want to be. I think you want to dabble in that. So we help them with behind the scenes. How do you coach women with these issues, and how do you market and sell without being sleazy and salesy, right? Um, and all the books are You've Still Got It, Girl. It's the After 50 Fitness Formula for Women. Hot Not Bothered. That's just a quick open it up 2 minute way to easy get a habit, put it back down, and navigating fitness after 50. And all those are available at Amazon, like everything else. And wherever books are sold, you can find them as well.
And they can follow you on Instagram at Flipping 50.
Flipping 50 TV. So don't
Okay,
forget the
perfect.
2 letters, and we're on social everywhere at Flipping 50 TV.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I enjoyed all of your expertise. You're just so down to earth and easy to talk to, and so knowledgeable. And I admire all that you have done with in the fitness industry to create your own niche.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me and great questions, great conversation with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And everybody, uh, I really liked what you said earlier about being hot, not bothered. Just we're gonna all walk away feeling a little hotter today. Uh, but also educated. So as always, keep on keeping on, everyone. Bye, everybody.